So today we are diving into a major issue that has sparked widespread debate in Ghana: the controversial Ghana-USA military agreement. Ghana's current president, John Dramani Mahama, when he was in opposition, fought against the Ghana-US military agreement as it was presented to parliament. His party members even went ahead and demonstrated against the agreement, which he wrote, "I join in declaring #Ghana First as my patriots and other democratic forces converged to demonstrate their opposition to the Ghana-USA military agreement" back in 2018. So now that he's in office, people are just looking to see the termination of this Ghana-USA military agreement. Upon his election, however, he had made promises to rectify so many agreements made by the previous administration, including Ghana's IMF deal, taxation and others, with the Ghana-US military agreement speculated as one of the rectifiable ones, as during his time in opposition, Mahama was one of the most vocal critics of this agreement. My viewers, note, let me be emphatically clear, there are no US bases in Ghana. Technically, the key word is technically, and you'd understand this statement as we proceed. The actual fact is, most people have no idea of the Ghana-US military agreement that's being speculated through the media. And here at Andy's Insights, I bring you factual happenings in the Ghanaian and African sphere, so stick to this video to the very end. Before we get into the details of this agreement, the impact it will make, and what Mahama is expected to do, don't forget to like, comment and subscribe to this channel for more updates on Ghanaian and African affairs. Let's get into it. The Ghana-United States Status of Forces Agreement, which is the SOFA Agreement, SOFA, was given consent by the Parliament, ratified by Ghana's Parliament on March 28, 2018, and was signed in May 2018. The agreement allowed the United States to establish a military presence in Ghana under the guise of the West African Logistics Network at the Kotoka International Airport in Accra. The government at the time, led by President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, assured Ghanaians that this was not a US military base. So I kind of don't understand why many people say Ghana is closing US bases. This was the only record of something close to a US base. However, even though it was technically not a military base, the agreement granted the US military significant privileges. It included unimpeding access. US military personnel and equipment could move freely in and out of Ghana without any restrictions whatsoever. It also has exemption from inspections. US military aircraft and personnel are exempted from boarding and inspection by Ghanaian authorities per the agreement, and also it has diplomatic privileges. US soldiers could enter Ghana without passports, using only their US Army identity cards. They also have control over key facilities. The West African Logistics Network Agreement took over one of the terminals at the Kotoka International Airport. It allows US military operations to function without Ghanaian oversight. You can see that for many Ghanaians, this agreement had raised serious concerns, and it still raises concerns to this day. The idea that a foreign military had such broad privileges in Ghana sparked fears about our sovereignty, security risks and economic implications. In 2019, then US Brigadier General Leonard Kosinski had said a weekly US flight from Germany to Accra was basically a bus route. Yes, he said it's a bus route. He stated that the West African Logistics Network is a cooperative security location. But doesn't that sound so ambiguous and open for interpretation? What do you think? Isn't that just another name for a US military base? Well, that's why I use the word technically, because if you have a location in Ghana, that's a cooperative security location. Well, I leave that to you to judge. When the agreement was made public, there was an immediate backlash. Many saw it as a direct threat to Ghana's independence, some of which had no idea about the actual realities of the actual case. And here it's really why it's risky. One is the Ghanaian sovereignty would be at risk, as the agreement essentially allowed US military operations on Ghanaian soil without having any real control over them. This led to accusations that Ghana was compromising its autonomy for little to no gain at all. There is also the factor of security risk, as hosting US military operations could make Ghana a target for terrorist attacks. If you didn't know, many extremists believe that dealing with the US is a reason for this, and this is just one of the concerns people had. Extremist groups operating in West Africa might view Ghana as a US ally and retaliate accordingly, which they've done in several West African countries who allow the US to have bases without going much deeper into it. It also brings about economic burden. The US pledged to invest $20 million in training Ghanaian troops and providing military equipment. However, many argued that this is just a small price for the US to pay in exchange for such extreme military access. Critics pointed out that Ghana was bearing the cost of maintaining facilities used by the US military without adequate compensation, and also there was the lack of transparency. The government's handling of the agreement was seen as secretive because up to date, not many people know of this agreement. The deal was pushed through parliament with little public consultation, further fueling suspicions. These concerns was what led to widespread protest and opposition, and one of the loudest voices against the agreement was none other than the current president, John Dramani Mahama. Back in 2018, when Mahama was in opposition, he strongly opposed the SOFA agreement, which is the SOFA agreement which I stated earlier. His party, the National Democratic Congress, organized massive protests against the deal. Mahama himself took to social media declaring with the hashtag Ghana First, the one I read to you in the beginning of this video, which read, "I join in declaring hashtag Ghana First as my compatriots and other democratic forces converge to demonstrate their opposition to the Ghana-US military agreement." This particular post on Facebook, Mahama positioned himself as a defender of Ghana's sovereignty and still to this day defends it. He promised that he would stand with the people against foreign military control. His opposition to the agreement has become a key part of his political stance, and now that he's back in office, the Ghanaian people expect action. Will Mahama terminate the agreement, as many hope? With Mahama now leading the country again, many Ghanaians are eagerly waiting to see if he fulfills his promise, either cancel or renegotiate the agreement, as he's doing with many agreements that Ghana has engaged in. His return to power signals a potential shift in Ghana's approach to foreign military deals. But let's see what Mahama's options are. The first option is to terminate the agreement. That's obvious. Mahama could push for a complete termination of the SOFA deal, ending US military operations under the West African Logistics Network. And this could be seen as a bold move to reclaim Ghana's sovereignty, but it could also strain diplomatic ties with the US, which is something, if you agree or not, is important to have diplomatic ties with countries like the US or any allies, be it African or abroad. Or his second option is to renegotiate. Instead of an outright cancellation, Mahama could attempt to renegotiate the terms, ensuring that Ghana retains more control over their military activities within its borders. This approach could both satisfy sovereignty concerns and also diplomatic interests as well, a win-win scenario. Or the status quo approach. The least likely approach would be for Mahama to maintain the agreements as it is. However, given his past opposition, it is very unlikely, as stated earlier. He has promised to rectify so many agreements made by the previous administration, including the IMF deal Ghana made, taxation, and the agreements which the Ghana-US military agreement is speculated to be part of. The Ghanaian people are watching closely. Mahama's stance on this issue could define his presidency if he doesn't make the right calls. Beyond Ghana, the outcome of this agreement could have wider implications for the region. West Africa has seen increased foreign military involvement, with countries like Niger and Mali also hosting foreign troops. If Mahama moves to terminate the deal, it could set a precedent for other African nations to reassess their military agreements with foreign powers. It could send a strong message that African nations are reclaiming control over their security policies. On the other hand, if Mahama renegotiates instead of cancelling, it could also create a framework for future agreements where African nations could demand better terms and transparency. The coming months of Mahama's administration will be crucial. The public expects action and the pressure is mounting, with many publications stating that Mahama is cancelling the military base and whatnot, but there are no military base. It's just an agreement that allows them use a facility, which could also be termed as having a military base in Ghana, but technically it isn't so. And using bases as in more than one is far-fetched. Many activists, political analysts, and citizens believe that the termination of this agreement will be a defining moment in Ghana's history. But Mahama has already proven himself as a leader willing to stand up for Ghana's interest, because irrespective of how the other African nations treat the AES nations, Mahama has been very vocal on his stance to unite Africa, and even going as far as to have a cordial relationship with Burkinabe President Ibrahim Traoré. The Ghana-US military agreement has been one of the most contentious issues in Ghanaian politics over the past few years. Now, with President John Dramani Mahama in office, the nation is watching closely to see if he will follow through on his promises to terminate or renegotiate this deal. Mahama's strong opposition to the agreement in 2018, this hope to so many people, including myself, as a leader willing to protect Ghana's sovereignty, now that he has the power to act. Let us know your thoughts in the comment section below, and don't forget to like this video, comment and subscribe for Ghanaian and African affairs. Thank you, and on to the next video. Be sure to check this next video out.